My name's Anthony from GradeXpert, and I'm going to be walking you through the GradeXpert Report Designer today. This is a session that is for beginners and intermediate users of the Report Designer. We will schedule additional training sessions for advanced users that show you some really advanced features of the Report Designer. But since we only have an hour today, we'll try and make sure we can get through all the basic stuff first. The version 12 upgrade is highly recommended. So if you're not yet running GradeXpert version 12, which is what you'll see on the screen now, if you're not yet running it, please contact us. We'll upgrade your system for you. It's a free upgrade, but there are a lot of improvements and enhancements in the new version that you can take advantage of straight away. So the GradeXpert Report Designer is a WYSIWYG design system. WYSIWYG is a shortcut of what you see is what you get, and that means that you can run the Report Designer in a way that you can actually see the information displaying in your report preview before you actually commit the report to be printed. Now, the Report Designer works on data that's already been entered into GradeXpert, and this can be end of semester report data, this can be comments, this can be data such as PM reading or PAT maths data that's been added into GradeXpert throughout the term or throughout the year. I'm just going to show you the data that we're going to use for this example report that we'll create. I have put some sample information in, but obviously on your system, you can use whatever data is relevant to you. So I've created a map just called Reports Training, and this has got some very straightforward data in there. I've got an assessment called Reading Assessment for 2020 Semester 2, and there's a score out of 20 along with a comment. I've got a PM benchmark level, which is for 2020 Term 4, and I've got two drop-down options for effort and class behavior. So this is some fairly straightforward data, but again, you can expand your data that you're using to include virtually anything. Now, if anyone has any questions while I'm chatting, feel free to type it into the chat window, because very often you're thinking questions about what other people are as well, and this is an opportunity then to get them answered. Keep in mind also that we can schedule any number of free online training sessions for you, just for your school. So if you feel you haven't gotten enough out of this session, for example, just contact us via email and we'll schedule in a session for just you and your colleagues where we can show you things that can be tailored to your requirements. So we're going to generate a report for this small group of students, and we do all of the report design in the GradeXpert Report Designer, which is accessible from the Report Designer toolbar button. Now, usually teachers don't have access to the Report Designer. This is usually a GradeXpert administrator feature. I think most of you are GradeXpert admin users. So if that Report Designer is disabled, you'll need to either upgrade your access level to an administrator or use a different user. So the first thing I'm going to do in the Report Designer is create a new report layout, and that's done by clicking the Report Layouts button. And a report layout is essentially one or more pages with your data items and your elements placed on the page that will display data from the GradeXpert database. Reports are arranged underneath report headers, and you can see the headers are in bold text, and you can collapse and expand your different reporting groups. So I'm just going to put one in for Testing 2020, and I'm going to create a new report by clicking the New Layout button, and you can see it's added a new row to the list of available reports called New Report Layout 1, which is just a default name. If I press the spacebar, I can change that report name just by typing in the correct name that I want to use here. So I'll just call this Testing Report 2020 Semester 2. So that gives that report a name, and try and make the name as meaningful as possible. For example, Year 1, end of semester, or end of 2020, or Year 3, reading, whatever your reports are that you want to design. Once you've created a report in the report layout list, you just click the button that says Open Layout. And that will create a blank one-page report that you can now start adding designs onto. Now, reports are created using these buttons in the toolbar below the Report Designer heading. And what you also need to do if you want to actually see data when you're designing reports is you have to choose a student whose data you're going to use. And this means that the student who you've selected here to preview, in this case Mason, his data will be the student's information that's displayed on the preview. For this year and this semester, I'm just going to change it to semester 2 because when we display data on the report, we want it to be Mason's data that we've entered or still have to enter for 2020 semester 2. If I go back to the students and results screen, you can see there's Mason, and we've got data in for reading assessment, PM benchmark, and work habits. So we're just going to use some of these items on the report design. So when we go back to the report designer, you can see that we've got a blank page here. We can zoom into the preview, we can zoom out. What I want to do first is go through the different types of items that you can drop onto a report page. First item on the toolbar is a label. Labels are used really for big chunks of text, such as a message from the principal or a description of the course content, for example. So when you've got a lot of text that you want to add in, you just click this button, add a label, and you can see that this label has been placed on the screen. And as with any item that you put onto a report, you can resize it and move it quite easily. Moving, you just click and hold while you move it around. And resizing, you just click the edge that you want to resize it, and that adjusts the size. It's going to delete that item. We can add a shape. Now, shapes can be circles, squares, or rounded squares, or rectangles, of course, again, depending on the shape size. This can be used for borders. This can be used to highlight certain blocks of text. If you double click on any item on a report page, that gives you access to the properties or the settings of that item. So in this case, we're looking at shape properties. Now, shapes can be a rectangle, an ellipse, which will be a circle or an oval, or a rounded rectangle. So if I use an ellipse, you can see now that the shape changes based on the size of the item. If I say I want the background color to be sky blue and not transparent, this is how we can change information on the page. So that's a shape. I'm just going to delete the shape so that we can see some of the other items. Let's put in an image. Now, images are selected from a file on your computer. So this can be a school logo. This can be an image of pretty much anything. So if I double click on image, when I go to the image properties, you can see now I can choose what image I want to bring in. So I'm just going to select an image. I've got a JPEG image that's on my hard drive called school sample logo. And I also want to resize the image. If I don't tick resize image, then it will stay at its original size. But if I do resize it, it will be sized to fit the available space in this graphic image. So we can see now there's the school logo. Any item on the report can also be duplicated, so you don't have to keep creating them from scratch. So you can just right-click on any item, and you've got access to a whole bunch of settings here. You can copy, duplicate, change the alignment, send them to the back layer, bring it to the front layer, and so on. I'm just going to choose this option, duplicate. And now you'll see there's an exact copy of that item that I can resize, change the image, move it around, and so on. I'm just going to press the delete key to get rid of it. So what I want to do in this example report is create the school logo along with the school name. The easiest way to put in the school name is just to put a label in. So I'm just going to add a label to the report. I'm going to stretch it across so that it fits most of the screen. And then as I've done with images and shapes, I just double click on the label and I can then start typing in the text that I want to appear on that label. Now this text is usually static, but you can include some replaceable codes, as you can see up here. First name, surname, and some other items. So I'm just going to put in the school name. I'll just call it Demonstration Primary School. And the default font is Arial and the default size is 9 point. And if I click OK now, there I'll zoom in a bit more. You can see it says Demonstration Primary School. That's all well and good, but it's a little boring and it's a little small. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to double click again on that label and I'm going to highlight the text I want to change. I want to make it a lot bigger. Let's make it say 22 points and let's pick another font and let's make it bold. And actually let's change the text color to light blue. So as you adjust the settings on a label, you'll see that the settings or the preview on the screen get changed to match the settings that you put in. I might make that blue a little bit less intense so that it more closely matches, say, my logo. I think blue-gray might be a better color. So there we've got our school name, our school logo, just by using an image file and a label. Now what we want to do on this example report is we want to show the student's name. Who is the report for? So this is what we call a data item. And a data item is something that pulls its information out of the GradeXpert database. Data items can be things like student name, the current class, the current year or semester. And if you select an assessment, it could be the assessment name or the actual result or the benchmark that you put in for that assessment. I'll show you what that looks like when we add a data item. So data items are this little icon with a student. I'll just bring this down because I want the student name to appear under the school name. So I'll just make that bigger so we can account for students with long names. And then we need to edit that data item's properties. You can see at the moment it says undefined, nothing's been specified. That's essentially just a placeholder. So we can edit the data item properties either by double clicking on the item or right clicking on the item and choose data properties. And now we've got access to a whole bunch of selections. What we want to do here is just put the student name in. So we're not putting in any assessment data at this point. We just want to pull out the student name. And we need to ensure then that we haven't chosen any assessment, which is shown up here where it says no assessment selected. And under the data item to print dropdown, you'll see all the options we've got for data that we can include in that new item that we've added. So let's choose just the first one, first name and then surname. And I'll move in a little bit more. So there we can see Mason Chang, that's his name. But again, this isn't exactly how we want it to look. We don't want the border around it. We want the student's name to be a little bigger. And in fact, we might even want to put a prefix in this to say the student. So it'll say student : Mason Chang. That's all done on the data properties. So right-clicking and going into data properties gives you access to the formatting tab as well. And this is where we can change how that data item is going to look on the report. Fonts, colors, alignments, borders, and so on. So the first thing we'll do is let's change it back to this band script light. Let's increase the font size for the student name to say 15 point. Let's get rid of the border. There you can see your alignments can be left, centered or right, and you can adjust the vertical alignment as well. But at this point, I actually want to put in some prefix text. And you can put in prefix or suffix text, and this text will be shown either before or after the data value that's pulled out. Now, in this case, we're pulling out the student's name. So we want to put a prefix of the text that says student. So it will say student : Mason Chang. If we click OK now, you can see that come up as we're expecting. Let's just move that up a little. And let's actually see if I double click on that. Can I make that bold? Yes, so I click the bold formatting button. And you'll see now it comes up in bold. And we're now getting a reasonably nice looking heading on our report. So the next thing I want to do on this report is put in Mason's class or year level. And the easiest way to do that is just to add another data item. You could have, of course, duplicated the other one, but I'm just going to add in a new data item underneath his name. And I'm going to use current class as the item to print. As I did with the other one, I'm going to change the font. I'll increase the size to say 12 point, make it bold. I'm going to get rid of the border again, because in this example, I don't want the border. So now you can see we've got his class name in there. He's in 4D. I might want the word class added in at the beginning. So now as a prefix, I can see who that student is. Just going to make his name slightly smaller so I can drag this up a bit further. A lot of the report design work is trial and error. While you're playing around with it, it might look different to what you want. So just try different options and you can then see how easily it can be set up. So now for Mason, the other thing that we want to put in here is his photo. So we've already added student photos into this GradeXpert demonstration database, and student photos are just another data item. So again, I'm going to choose data item. I'll make it about the size I want his photo. And then I'm going to double click on that data item again. None of these options are needed because we're not putting text in. So we just go to data item selection and then come down to student photo. It's that simple. We can adjust the size of the photo. Obviously, we want to keep it as close to the original size as possible. You can even make them thumbnail size depending on your report design. So I'm actually going to bring Mason's photo up next to his name and class. So as I just move those items out the way, we can now see the student photo next to the student's name and his class. And in fact, the last thing we want to do is show when this is for. Is this 2020 semester 2? Is this 2018 term 1? So I'm going to duplicate Mason's class data item. So we'll see his class again. Now I'm going to double click on the current class and I'm going to change that. In fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove that assessment completely. I'm going to press the delete button on the data item to print, because what I want to show here is just text. So you can use a data item in a similar way to a label. Data items have got some advantages over labels, specifically the ability to align them centrally. And in this case, I could have used a label, but I'm just going to type in semester 2, 2020 as the text. So I haven't selected a data item. It's just going to show the prefix text. And I'll make this, let's make it blue-gray color again, and I'll make it a slightly bigger font. Doesn't sit too well there. It's formatted to align to the top. So I'm just going to actually change the vertical alignment to the center of each box. And you'll see that they then line up a little better. So there's a heading on our report. That's the heading page. And now we can start adding our data in. I'm just going to click Save Only, which saves a copy of that report design. We don't want to design our entire report and spend hours and hours on it, only to forget to click the Save button. So it's a good idea just to click save as you're going, every 15 minutes or every half hour as you're going through your report design. So what we want to do now is, let's just look at the data that we've got for young Mason. I want to put his reading assessment for 2020 semester 2, his raw score, in this report, as well as the comment for that reading assessment. So back in the report designer, the way we do that is by adding in another data item. So let's add another data item. I'm going to make this the full width of the page. And I'm going to double click on the data item because now we do want to select an assessment because we want to show assessment data in this particular box. So at this point, we click select assessment. And this is where you can choose any assessment on your assessment list. Whatever you've got, you can pull out any of the data. So I'm going to choose the reading assessment, which is what we've seen in the map. So once I've chosen the assessment, you'll see that the data item to print drop-down list contains not only information about the student, but as we scroll down, you can see there's all the assessment data related to this. So we can show the assessment name, the date of the test. As I move further down, you can see there are the result types, or the result comment, or the teacher name, or how old the student was at the date of the test. In this case, I just want to put the assessment name. Now, because Mason does have 2020 data for semester 2, the assessment name is actually shown. It says reading assessment. If I chose an assessment period where there is no data, for example, semester 1 2020, then you'll start seeing items that say no result found. So when you're designing a report, if you don't have data entered for some of the items that you're going to be including, it's always a good idea to put some sample data in as well. Yes, we are recording this presentation, by the way, and it will be available to everyone afterwards. So I'm going to go back to my semester 2 data for young Mason because we know he's got some data. So there's his reading assessment, but we've just said, show me the name. In fact, what I'll do is I'll make that a little bit narrower. I'm going to double click on that. Now I want to change a few of the formatting items. I want to go back to my nice text, whatever that is. I'll make it, say, 12 point. Vertical alignment is center. Now I do want to show a border, and actually I want to put a little background color on that. I want to start giving this a bit of color. Obviously make use of color. It's very useful, but don't go overboard. Reason is you don't want a report so filled with different colors that it becomes difficult to read. I'll use light turquoise as an example. So now we know his reading assessment box is showing there, and now we want to put the result next to it. And the easiest way to do that is just to duplicate that data item. So again, we just right click on the data item we want to duplicate, and we press the duplicate option. You'll see we've got an exact copy of that. But in this box, we don't want the assessment name, we want the assessment result. So I'm just going to double click on there. I go back to data item selection, and instead of choosing assessment name only, I'll come down to the result. I want to show the raw score or any other result type that you've got in there. And now you can see it shows his raw score. In this case, it's 12. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to format it so it fits in nicely. So I'm going to narrow the raw score box and put it at the end of the description. I don't like this blue background much, so I'm going to change it to a gray background. In this case, silver, which is just a light gray. And then the actual raw score, I'm just going to leave it as a white background, but I'm going to put a prefix in called raw score. Or in fact, I might just put the word score. I'm then also going to center the result horizontally in the box. And now you can see how it comes out there. One problem, of course, we haven't put a space after the colon in the prefix, so the score, the colon, and the actual result all run into one another. So all we do is, again, double-click on that box, and after the score colon, we just put in a space. Now, if this happened to be, say, a percentage, we would just then put in a suffix of a percentage. So I'm going to double-click on this again, just for example, and I'm going to put a percentage sign in as the suffix. And you'll see now the score is shown as a percentage. I'll hit the save button, and at any time you can click print preview, and this will give you a preview of what the report looks like so far. Again, if anyone has any questions, just type them into the chat box and we'll see if we can get them answered immediately. So for this reading assessment, we had actually also included a comment. So I want the teacher's comment for this reading assessment to appear below the reading assessment score. So what I'll do is I'll just duplicate this box again. And the reason I keep duplicating it is because that means the font is already set, the assessment has already been selected, and I can just change what's displayed and colors. I want the comment to show over here. So the things I need to do is I need to change what's shown in that box from the assessment name to the comment. I need to change the background, say, to white, and I need to change the font to something slightly smaller and aligned to the top of the box. So I can right-click, go to Data Properties, and what I need to do now first is choose what I'm going to show in that box, and that's always done on the Selection tab. So we've got the reading assessment selected. All I'm going to do now is come down and choose Result Comment. Now, every assessment in GradeXpert has an optional result comment. You don't have to set that up. It is already there. You just have to enable it in your map. So I just want the result comment to be shown. I want my vertical alignment to go to the top. I want my background color to be white. I don't want bold font. I think I've already selected semi-bold, so I'll just go back to light. And there are your comments. All right, so there was a question on the chat asking for a copy of a demonstration report that is provided onto GradeXpert. We can do that quite easily. Simply send us an email and request that, and we can import report designs into your database. The only problem in doing that sometimes is that you may not have all the matching assessments set up, but we can set up default reports for you, and then you can play around with it to your heart's content. Keep in mind, of course, that GradeXpert as a company has a report design service, so we can do all the report designs for you. All right, so we're looking now at a fairly straightforward report that has an assessment, a score, and the comment. What I'd like to show you now is the ability of GradeXpert to automatically format a data item where you have a drop-down list as selection items. And what I mean by that is when we look at work habits, for example, we've got 5 possible outcomes: needs attention, acceptable, good, very good, excellent. Now we can certainly just display whatever the teacher has selected. So there would be something similar to the reading assessment that says progress, acceptable. But when you have a scale, in this case a 5-point scale, it's actually more useful when you're reading the report to see all 5 possibilities and just have the selected one ticked or marked. And that's very easy to set up on GradeXpert. It will only work with assessments that have been set up for select item from list. So if you're just typing in any number between 1 and 100, for example, that obviously won't work. But if you've prepared a drop-down list for teachers to use when they're doing their report writing, then it's very easy to convert that into a selection on the reports. And we'll show you what we mean. All right, so what I want to do now is underneath reading assessment, I want to add in work habits, which is classroom behavior and classroom effort. So I'm going to add in a new data item. I'm going to make it sizable enough to fit everything in. And I'm now going to edit my data item. So this is where we need to choose our work habits effort. So I'll just say effort as a search. And now what item do I want to display? Well, I want to display the result. In this case, it's progress. Now, when you choose a result type that is a drop-down list, this highlight results in list section becomes available to tick. So what I want to do is I want to, yes, highlight the results in list. I want to show it as a tick under the correct one. I want to show the header and the result. That's pretty much it. So now you can see what GradeXpert's done is it's found that 5-point scale. It's automatically set up the correct number of columns, put the correct column headings in, and also ticked the matching item. But of course, we don't know that this is effort. So I'm going to narrow that so we can put in another box there that says effort. And you can see as we narrow it, everything else adjusts accordingly. So I am going to duplicate this item. So we've got a copy of it. And I'm going to resize and move it so that it shows up in front of the box that we're looking at. This is a bit of a mess at the moment because we haven't actually changed it from showing the result to the assessment name. So I'm just going to double click on that. And I'm going to change it from the progress result type to the assessment name. In fact, I might even use the header as well, which will include the words work habits. Sorry, it'll actually include the words report items. So I might just go back to the name only. Let's now change the font to our Sanskrit font. Let's make that, say, 11-point bold. And let's vertically align it to the center of the box. Actually, I'm going to make the background gray again, or silver. So now you can see that this particular section on the report relates to the student's effort. Now, work habits effort is actually broken over 2 lines, so I can narrow this and widen the work habits so it shows on a single row. So that's one way to do it. The font where it shows needs attention, acceptable, good, and so on, that still needs to be changed to Sanskrit. So I just double click on that item, and when it comes to font, just change it to the correct font. So I'll just click Save Only. Let's get a preview of that one as well. Now, the 5-point scale that we've set up actually has colors on them. We've already color-coded them from red all the way up to green for excellent, and we can optionally include those colors in the design. So if I just double-click and choose this item that says use the result colors if they've been defined, you'll see now that the report becomes more colorful. These colors are defined in the result type drop-down list when you're setting it up. Again, we can help with any of this, but that's pretty much how easy it is to set up. What we can do then, we want the same graph to show for class behavior. So I'm just going to duplicate both of these items. So I hold down the control button and I can multi-select, so I can choose more than one item. If I've multi-selected and click duplicate, then you'll see that both of them have been duplicated. Now this one, instead of effort, we want this to be class behavior. So I'll double click on this one and I'll change the data item. Instead of work habits effort, it's actually a different assessment called class behavior. Everything else stays the same. And you can see for class behavior, the tick is now under very good. We also need to change the assessment name. So I'll double click on the assessment name column and change to class behavior. In many cases, it's not necessary to repeat the headings, to repeat that 5-point scale. So you only want to show the score or the data item. That's done just by double-clicking on the item again, and instead of showing the header and the result, or the header only, we just want to show the result only. And you'll see now that the header doesn't appear on there anymore. It's starting to get a little bit out of whack in terms of size, so I'm going to make a couple of changes here. Firstly, I'm going to reduce this height so that it more closely matches the height of the one above it. And I'm going to reduce the height of this one as well. And I'm going to reduce the height of this one. Just see if those line up. Almost. In fact, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to separate these 3 items out. So we have 3 rows. The top one is going to be the heading, followed by the 2 data items. So I'm going to right click and duplicate the first row. Now the top row, I'm going to change to headers only because we just want the headers to show there. The second row, so I'm going to choose, I meant to say header only. The second row, we want just the result. And the third row, we want just the result. And I'm just going to duplicate this item up here. I'm going to rename this. I'm going to remove the assessment completely, and I'm actually just going to put a space in there because I just want a box. Couple of things to note here. You want to try and keep your font sizes reasonably consistent. So the work habits and effort looks much bigger than reading assessment, and needs attention acceptable good looks too small. So I'm going to increase the font size firstly of my header to about 11 points. Make sure it still fits in. It doesn't exactly fit in. It kicks needs attention over to 2 lines. So let's bring that down point size, see if that improves it. There we go. And then work habits effort, I want to bring that down to about 9 point just to see if that looks a bit better. Was this one 9 point as well? No, that was 10 points. So maybe we'll make them both 10 point. There are some instances where some of the boxes appear to not line up properly, but they always do, especially when you print them out. So let's actually change, let's put in something here that says work habits as the text. So it's giving us a little heading there. And then actually I want to replace this whole text. I don't want the word work habits effort. I'm going to get rid of everything and actually just put in as a prefix the word effort, because we've got work habits as a heading. So you can see it looks like that now. And I'm going to do the same with class behavior. I'm going to remove the assessment because we don't want that whole assessment name in there, and just use this almost as a label by typing in class behavior as the prefix text. So if you've defined prefix text or suffix text, you don't need to select an assessment. Just make that non-bold as well. So that's looking quite nice now in terms of a report design. It's a fairly straightforward one, but this is the basis of all the other report design options that you can choose. You can add graphs in here as well. Graphs are added in using the graph component. That's probably for a more advanced lesson, but just to show you what we can do here. When you choose to include a graph, you need to tell GradeXpert what data to show. So again, you double click on that item, and then you have your options. So what I'll do is I'll actually just show the reading assessment with a border. I want to show the raw score, that's fine. And I also want to change my options so that I show entire class. See how that looks. So there's a graph showing Mason's score compared to other students in that class. We actually need to make a few changes to that graph. So the easiest way to do that is to, let's say, get rid of names across the bottom or get rid of everything across the bottom. So these are your standard graph options. So I don't want a legend, I don't want the values, and I don't want to see the names across the bottom. So now you can see the graph. Might be a bit difficult to read on the screen, but you can now see where that student's result is compared to everyone else in his class when he did this test. You can change most of the items on this graph in terms of appearance. You can change colors, you can change orientations, you can change labels, but I'll just leave it at that one for the moment. Now what we want to do is put a message from the principal in, for example. So I'm going to add a text box underneath the graph. In fact, you know what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete that. I'm going to add in a second page to this report that has the message from the principal. You can add in new pages. Each report can be up to 20 pages, but you can add in new pages just by clicking the Add Page icon on the toolbar. And you'll see now page 2 comes up as a blank page, and you can move between these two pages just by clicking the correct tab. You can also name the pages so that they're a lot easier to understand when you're printing reports or when you're playing with your report designs. You basically click on a page and click this icon that says Rename Current Page. So I'm going to say, I'll just say, let's say Reading and Work Habits. You can see that the page name, now instead of saying page 1, which is a bit vague, now gives us actually the content of the page. And page 2, I'm going to change to Principal's Message. Now what I want on the Principal's Message page is a copy of the school name and the school logo. So I'm going to select both of those by holding down the Control key and clicking on both. Right-click and choose Copy. Move to my new page and choose Paste. And that, as you would imagine, just places a copy of those items onto a new page. I can then put in my principal's message here. You just double click on it and start typing. Let's say, welcome, thank you, and good night. So this principal likes to have a very brief message, but I might just copy that a few times so that we can see how it fills out the page. Let's change that to our nicer font, slightly bigger. And I won't show a border, I'll just leave it like that. Seymour Skinner rides again. And so that is an easy way to include a cover page or message from principals or explanation pages of what the testing means on any report without having to generate a separate page in Word and manually collate it. Now, I might want this report page, this principal's message, to be the first one on the report. So we can change the order of the pages just by clicking one of these buttons, move the page left or move the page right. So if I click this button, you can now see that the principal's message is page 1 and reading and work habits is page 2. While you're designing your report, you can also turn off the preview. So if I untick the preview box, that means as I'm moving items around or adding items in, it doesn't take time to generate a preview, and you can actually create items on your report much quicker. Once you've moved things around or changed the settings, you can just tick the preview button again, and it will give you a preview of the report as it stands. So let's say the last thing we want to do now is just put a little place for a teacher to sign. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a box, put it right at the bottom of the page. This will be where the teacher signs. So we've got a box. So I'm just going to say teacher Smith. And let's say December 2020. We'll change that to our regular font, slightly bigger. If I double click, I'm actually going to say show a border around this. And now there's a space for the teacher to sign. So that's a 2-page report containing graphs, drop-down items, comments, logos, places to sign, and so on. Does anyone have any questions up to this point? I am aware that you're probably seeing a lot of stuff that is new to you, so there's no expectation that you know exactly how to generate reports, but this is a really good starting point because it can get more involved as well. In the advanced session that we'll be scheduling later, you'll see how we can do things like change page orientation, page sizes, margins, use linked reports, insert pages from other reports as well. Linked reports are very useful because you might have a different report design for each year level, but you're using the same cover page. So instead of having 6 cover pages, you just have 1. And that one cover page can then be linked from that cover page report into your new report, and you don't have to keep doing it. So those are the links. You can add pages, you can delete pages, of course, rename pages, and so on. But we've now actually got a report called Testing Report 2020 Semester 2. What I'm going to do now is show you what happens when we print these reports. So I've got my cohort of students here, 4D. I'm going to print reports just for these students, and I'm going to use the new reports that we've designed. I might just change some of the comments so that we can see they for different students. So when it comes time to printing reports, as many of you already know, you bring up the cohort of students you want. You don't even need to have the map loaded, but you just click the button that says Student Reports. Now at this point, you choose the report design you want to use, and I'm going to choose our testing report. So this means that any report that's printed at this stage is going to use that new layout that we've selected. And you can choose different layouts, of course, depending on what report you want to use. And I'm going to put semester 2 because that's the data we want to use. And here you can see, you can choose the pages that you want to print as well. You might choose just to print a comments page so that you can do proofreading on that. But let's just use those 2 for the moment. If we hit print preview, you'll see there's page 1, there's page 2 for Mason, there's the letter from the principal, and there's the next student, Russell, and you can see everything just changes according to the student's data. In fact, what I might do is just reprint these reports. I'll leave out the principal's message, and we'll just look at the work habits. And so we've got 8 pages printed, and all the data changes based on the reports that we're looking at, the student changes. At this point, if it's configured, you can click the send to parents, and that will send this report to parents as an email attachment, as a PDF document. You can print them out, you can export them, you can even email copies of this to other users. That means is that other teachers who are using GradeXpert will receive an email copy of this report so that you can then discuss with them as well. So lots of stuff to look at. One of the useful functions in the report designer is once you've designed your report, you can actually convert this automatically to a student map for data entry. And that's very easily done once you've got your report up by clicking this options button in the bottom of the screen. And you have a number of options here that say save layout as, which lets you create a duplicate of this report under a different name, or convert this page or the entire report to a student map. I'm going to choose this item, convert the entire report layout to a student map. Give it a description, tell it which map group to add it into. I'll just use the testing map group for now. And we're done. It uses the currently selected year and semester or term when it generates the map, and it will allow you to enter data for that year and term or semester. So if I go back to students and results, let's close that. I'll open up my new student map. There it is, testing report 2020. And you can see now it has created a map based on the pages in the map, in the report as well. If I had a 5-page report, there'd be 5 different pages on the map. We've asked for 2020 semester 2 data for reading assessment, as well as work habits and class behavior. So this map was automatically created based on the data items in the report that we've set up. I'll bring up a couple of other report designs so you can see what some of the report look like for some school data. So for example, in Victoria, we'd have the Victorian curriculum shown up in special graphic images that are shown. So we don't have any data for this particular student, but you can see they're just all data items, labels. We've got a comments page as well. One of the things we can do in our comments page is if we've got a big box of text, we can tell GradeXpert to automatically reduce the height of that box so that everything below it is lifted up and you don't have big white spaces in your comment boxes. That's done, well, that's only available when you are using report comments or result comments as the item to display. So in this case, we've got an assessment called general comment. We're showing the result comment, and you'll see this box that says reduce height if required is ticked. And if I untick that, you'll see the report design does not reduce the size of the box. That's how big the box is without it being reduced. So if I only typed in 3 or 4 lines of comment, then this box would reduce in height so that only those 3 or 4 lines fit in and you don't get big white spaces in the box. The white spaces appear at the bottom of the page, which is far more acceptable. Let's have a look at a couple of other report layouts if we can bring some up. We're going back quite a way now, 2016. Let's just have a look at the Ausbells. Yep. So you can have little logos designed at the bottom of the page with all these graphics in there. Down here you can see they're just labels with graphic images. So there's really no limit to what you can put into your reports because they are so flexible. This is this is meant just as an introduction to the report designer. We'd love it if you were able to design your own reports and really get into it and make them look exactly how you want. As I mentioned, we have a report design service, but we also actually are happy to review your report designs. Once you've created a report design for 1 year level, you can then let us have a look at it and we can tweak it so that it looks as good as it can be, and then you can just use that as a duplicate. You can just keep copying that report design for other year levels, just changing different subjects for the different year levels. Does anyone have any other questions before we finish up for the day? If you do, just type them into the chat box. So we can see some people do want to give it a go. We understand that this can take a bit of getting used to, especially since for many schools you only do this once a semester. And that is where our report design service is very handy, because we take that load off you. Yes, it is a paid service, but it does free you up from doing all this report design, and we simply add it all in there. There's a question about single term reports. That's absolutely fine, works exactly the same way, but instead of, for example, showing semester 2, we'd probably just show term 1. So everything begins with what data you want to show in your report, and then from that we make sure the assessments are set up in GradeXpert and the report looks as you're expecting. So you can use this for reports that go out once a term, once a week, once a year, once a semester, however often you choose to have that go out. Thank you everybody so much for your time and attention. As I mentioned, please get in touch with us if you want us to schedule any more one-on-one training sessions for the school. That's no problem at all. That is included in your annual license, so there's no extra charge for that. And hopefully you'll enjoy the rest of the day, and let us know if you've got any other questions. Thanks everybody, and bye-bye.